Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel that takes on all kinds of issues related to narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and just toxic situations in general, with the hope that this information will educate you, maybe stop you from getting into one, which is going to be relevant to today's video, and help you heal if you're coming out the other side. And if you're new to this channel, please subscribe. Love having you join this community, all these people out there that are more narcissistic resistant. I love that. And if you want to be notified every day when we put out a new video, just hit that notification button and then you'll be told, so you can stop down and get your narcissist minute or 10 minutes, as it were. So today, I don't watch as much TV as I would like, just because I find it entertaining, but I often don't get the time. And sometimes it'll take me 3 or 4 sittings to get through an entire movie. And that was recently the case with something that I think many of you have already watched, called The Tinder Swindler. You know, that one got me going. A lot of you emailed me. I got messages from lots of people. Dr. Ramani, please watch this hot mess. And watch it, I did. I got to tell you, this one made me so upset that I watched it in pieces, partly because I was so tired and I'd watch it at bedtime so I'd fall asleep. But also I found it kind of upsetting. So The Tinder Swindler. This is clearly narcissism 101. Like, I'm watching it, I'm thinking, wow, this would actually just be a great teaching video in some ways. So let's take it from the top, because it really gets to a lot of the sort of the architecture of a narcissistic relationship. But there were some other takeaways I got from it, because, after I watch something like that, damn well I'm going to sit down and start reading everything else I could on this entire situation. So this was just fantastic love bombing, right? Great examples of good old love bombing. The things that people fall for, the pictures of people on private jets and in the back seats of luxury cars and in photographs with very expensive champagne and wearing designer labels. I sometimes wonder if maybe one of the greatest narcissism prevention tools for relationships is people sort of knowing, if you ever see a person with a picture of themselves in a private jet in the backseat of a luxury car drinking expensive champagne, that should be the biggest red flag you've ever seen, right? But sadly, in our sort of adult people making relationship decisions on the basis of Disney films world that we live in, that's not always honored. So that love bombing piece, though, was so pronounced. And what this person did was, this so-called love bomber, this so-called swindler, and he is a swindler, he's not a so-called, a definite swindler, was actually a really, really great, sort of old grift, where you show people, look at how much money I have. There's no way, if I borrow money from you, I'm always going to have plenty to pay you back. That was sort of grifter 101 as well. So we got a lot of 101s here. Love bombing 101, grifter 101. So a lot of you who watch this definitely were saying, okay, we got the love bombing piece down, Dr. Ramani. That's great. But as I watch this, the bigger question is, what can we learn about ourselves in terms of relationships and how narcissistic people get the ball so far down the court with us? One theme that definitely jumped out at me was the sense of the sort of too good to be true, right? And how people sort of fall for that. The idea of like, wow, this person, and they're too good to be true. But one of the ways that this Tinder swindler was actually able to sort of combine love bombing strategies was he put himself out there as someone who might need to be rescued. Puts himself out there as some diamond selling whatever nonsense he was saying he was, but was also saying, I'm in so much danger. I could be in danger. Please help me. Please help me. So what it does, and that pulling for rescuing in the love bombing phase, in some ways actually creates more of a glue between two people than just the, I'm going to spend a lot of money on you piece. Because what it does is it really puts skin in the game for the other person in the relationship. I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you what a good partner is. And that the Tinder swindler actually did a really nice job of sort of making that dynamic, which I'm very aware of, but I don't always think I articulate well, which is this idea of most people aren't so naive that they're going to fall for the roses and the vacations. And honestly, there was one part of the movie where this fool says, I'm going to fly an hour to come have coffee with you. First of all, holy carbon footprint. But second of all, no one sane would fly an hour. None of us are that. that somebody would fly an hour to have coffee with us. That to me was one of the most love bomby things I'd ever seen. And that people didn't see it that way was actually quite shocking to me, right? So that's that grandiose kind of representation of the fairy tale. And for a lot of people, a working through from childhood. But for some people believing, wow, you're going to fly an hour to have coffee with me. You must be really into me. No, it's a foolish thing to do. So anyone who's going to fly an hour to have a cup of coffee with you on a whim, there's something that's just not quite right there. But this idea of rescuing someone, feeling like, wow, they've done all these nice things for me. Now I can really, again, put some psychological capital into this relationship and I can take care of them when they ask me to do something. And that dance, that part of the love bombing, to me, that this entire story really depicted that well. And that's where a lot of people don't even recognize that they're being love bombed. They think, wow, like, I guess being in a relationship is doing these things that may not feel comfortable. And after all, homie's flying around in these jets and sitting in the back seat of that fancy car, people are going to believe that, oh, of course he's going to be able to pay me back. Again, the classic grift. But I have to say the scene in the Tinder Swindler that probably made the strongest impression on me was almost towards the end, where there was a series of these WhatsApp voice messages that were coming out where he was trying to get the final person that he was trying to shake down he was alternating between saying, I've been arrested, right? Please send money. I need the money. And he would start yelling, his volume would go up. You could sense that the cracks were coming in. And then he'd quickly say, I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry, baby. And then he'd get into the whole, but I need the money, and then start getting agitated again. That alternation between attempting to appease the target to get money and then raging at the target, that to me really got captured so well in all of those WhatsApp voice messages going back and forth. That captures what a lot of people endure in these relationships. And that's the trauma bond, right? Going back between, you're so good to me, I like you so much, you mean so much to me, rage, rage, rage. Pick a lane, right? So that was that dynamic, the alternation between appeasing and raging, and how that creates the trauma bond. What was interesting to me was the last woman featured in the film was the one who ended up dropping a dime on him. She said something very interesting. She said, he never thought I would do it. In a way, what she was the anti-gaslighter. She fell for it. It doesn't seem like she got shook down for as much money as some of the earlier people they interviewed. But what he had done was he'd gotten away with it so many times that arrogance and grandiosity of, I figured out the greatest scam in the world. No one's ever going to call me out. And he would use menace and fear. You'll be sorry. I'm going to get you. And to her credit, I got to tell you, to her credit, because a lot of people might have been scared not knowing what this guy was capable of. She was actually able to drop a dime on him, basically. And he didn't suspect it. So that's how the anti-gaslighting piece of that works. So I was actually quite impressed by them showing that dynamic, because we don't always get to see it. And in fact, when you look at the classical film from 1944, the film Gaslight, that's sort of how she did the anti-gaslight too. He never thought she'd have the stomach for it. She finally did. And that's how she shut him down. Sorry for the spoiler. It's from 1944. It's not a spoiler anymore. You should have seen the original film by now. Another thing that struck me about this film was that it wasn't even the shady money stuff. It was how the anger escalated in him. And then it was really him taking off the mask. So let's break that piece down, because what was striking to me was the first woman who was interviewed, that was talking about the scam. She kept going with it. She kept giving him more loans. She kept sending him more money. She kept sending him more credit cards. She didn't even seem that suspicious, or maybe a little worried about the money. But when he took off the mask and showed his angry self, it was as though her narrative of him got cracked, because that's what it was. She had a narrative. This guy who's so cool, who travels so much, who has this dashing business and this dashing lifestyle. I've got my love story. So even when he kept asking for her for money, it didn't crack through. But him taking off the mask and no longer being charming is what sort of cracked through for her, which was actually quite interesting to me, that was what got through, not the scam that he was running. Another thing that also jumped out at me about the Tinder Swindler is the not asking the questions that could reveal the red flags, because there was a fear that their narratives would get punctured, right? They wanted the fairy tale. But from a narcissistic abuse standpoint, the thing that really struck me was the willingness of so many people who were commenting and all the rest of it to blame these women. I think all of us probably got a little frustrated, especially when they're like, I want the love story. Go to Tinder and I couldn't see through this. It's easy for us to see through it. We were watching a show. We weren't caught in it. But it almost felt like there was more blame being leveled against these women than the damn swindler. And I really struggled with that because it really showed me how much narcissistic abuse survivors go through, in the sense that if people go back into these relationships for trauma bonded reasons, for fear reasons, for practical reasons, the sense is that, well, it's not really narcissistic abuse if they went back. In this case, listen, these were women who still kind of believed in the love story. That doesn't mean a person deserves to be punished to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars, but the willingness to blame people who get into these situations. And if it's not this, it's romance scams or all the rest of it, always reminds me of how hard it is for survivors of narcissistic abuse in any form to reach out. No, the responsible party here was this grifter guy who had no problem shaking down people and basically running his sort of, his rudimentary Ponzi scheme, basically. But as I said, the thing that struck me was it took one person calling BS on this guy, calling out the gaslight. Because by now, as with many narcissistic folks, the grandiosity and the belief you can get away with it actually fuels them more and more. There was another interesting theme that jumped out in this film, which was about enablers. He found his enablers, whatever the so-called bodyguard that he took videos of being beaten up. So I guess that whole situation was staged as well. But he had his enablers. And those enablers were, maybe they were getting a cut of the scam, who knows? But, grifter's going to grift, and they're often going to find people to do it alongside of them. But the fact is, the world continues to enable these people. When I got to the end of the film, they were sort of doing the post-mortem on it. And I think this guy did however many few months he did in prison, and then got out and appears to be living this big lifestyle again and running a business consulting site. However that works. I mean, I guess if you're looking for someone who can teach you how to shake down people in this way and sort of get monetized narcissistic abuse, I suppose he's your guy. But he also has the girlfriend. So yet people continue to keep falling. It is a reminder to me, because a lot of people wonder this. Don't people see? Maybe I was the one who was foolish. Maybe everyone else in the world isn't going to see it. Well, those final clips from that film show us that he's already found his new person. Because the one thing we've got to remember is, in a world that is so committed to enabling narcissistic people, that the person who still is able to sort of show the sassiest and the fanciest pictures on social media and everywhere else still gets to the finish line. And the one thing we can always set our clocks by is that narcissistic people will always find a new victim. I mean, I guess not everybody's watching this YouTube channel. So I actually found the movie, I found it to be sort of fluffy, ridiculous, fun in some ways, but I also found it unsettling. And I have to say, the thing that I found most unsettling was the stuff I read afterwards, of how quickly people were to blame people who got scammed by somebody who clearly has a lot of narcissistic top notes, no empathy, deep entitlement, tremendous arrogance, the validation seeking, and all the rest of it. But over and over again, that film and so many others remind us that the world will continue to glorify narcissistic abusers and continue to really, really shame and blame the survivors who have been affected by them. So them's my take on the Tinder Swindler. I think I'm going to try to watch something more uplifting the next time I finally sit down. Thanks again.